Hello Junior 6, how are you? This is our last lesson in first term. It's about human locomotory system. Human locomotory system. Let's start our lesson. First, what's meant by movement? Movement is the ability of organism to change its position. It is the ability of organism to change its position. The structure of locomotors. It consists of skeletal system, bones, and muscular system, muscles. Skeletal system, bones, and muscular system, muscles. So, our locomotory system consists of two systems, the skeletal system and the muscular system. Our skeletal system consists of axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. Axial skeleton and appendicular skeleton. And let's start with the axial skeleton. The axial skeleton consists of three main parts: skull, ribcage, and backbone. Again, skull, ribcage, and backbone. Let's study them. Let's start with the skull. The skull is a bony box which contains cavities of eyes, nose, and ears. So the skull is a bony box which contains cavities for the eyes, for the nose, and for the ears. What do you think? What is the function of the skull? Yes, its function is to protect our brain, is to protect the brain. Second part of the axial skeleton is the backbone. This is the axis of our skeleton. Its structure, it consists of 33 vertebrae, and between each vertebra and the other, there is cartilage. Why? There is cartilage between vertebrae to prevent friction during motion. So our vertebral column consists of 33 vertebrae, and it contains cartilage between them to prevent friction during motion. So, cartilage between vertebrae to prevent friction. There is cartilage to prevent friction during motion. So, what is the function of the vertebral column? Its function is to protect the spinal cord, and it allows the body to move in different directions, protecting the spinal cord and help our body to move in different directions. Let's talk about the third part in our axial skeleton, which is the rib cage. Our rib cage consists of 12 pairs of ribs, and the first 10 ribs are connected to the sternum or the breastbone, and its function is to protect the heart and the two lungs, and it helps in inhalation and exhalation during respiration. Okay, my friends, so rib cage consists of 12 pairs of ribs, 12 left and 12 right. So they are 12 pairs, left and right. And the first 10 ribs are connected to the sternum, and there are 2 pairs floating. And what about the function? It protects our heart, our lungs, and helps in respiration, inhalation, and exhalation. Now, let's talk about the appendicular skeleton. And our appendicular skeleton consists of bones of the upper limbs and bones of the lower limbs. And let's start with the lower limbs. The lower limbs, our legs, and the bones are called femur bone, and it's the longest bone in our body. the shaft and foot bones. So the bones of lower limbs are femur, shaft, and foot. Now let's talk about the bones of upper limbs. Upper limbs. Shoulder bones in the upper part, shoulder bones, then humerus bone, forearm, and hand bones. Shoulder bones, humerus, forearm, and hand bones. So my friends, our appendicular skeleton consists of the bones of upper limbs and bones of lower limbs. Bones of upper limbs and bones of lower limbs. Now, let's talk about another topic, which is the joints. What's meant by joint? Joint is the location where bones meet each other, or we can say it's the place where two bones meet each other. Now, what are the types of joints? Joints may be immovable joints, or slightly movable joints, or limited, movable, or freely movable joints, or we can say wide joints. So the types of joints: immovable, slightly movable, and freely movable joints. First, immovable joints. They don't allow any movement. Examples: the joints between the bones of the skull. The joints between the bones of the skull are immovable joints. This is the first type, immovable joints in the skull. The second type is slightly movable joints, which can move only in one direction. They only move in one direction. Examples: knee joint and elbow joint. They move in one direction, so we call them slightly movable joints. Knee joint and elbow joint. The third type is the freely movable joints, or we can call them wide joints. They allow the movement in all directions. Examples: shoulder joint. We can move it in all directions. Another example: the thigh joint or hip joint. It's a freely movable joint. Hip joint or thigh joint. Another example of freely movable joints is the ankle joint above our foot. Ankle joint. It moves in all directions. And the last example of the freely movable joints is the wrist joint in our hand. It's a freely movable joint. So my friends, freely movable joints like the shoulder joint, wrist joint, hip joint, and ankle joint. Have a nice day, my friend. Study hard and goodbye. Bye-bye.